We begin here in Tokyo, where the foreign and defense chiefs of Japan and the U.S. have wrapped up a high-profile meeting focused on the bilateral alliance and countering regional challenges. The two countries issued a document after the meeting expressing concern over China's maritime activities and human rights conditions in the country.
The strategic environment of the Indo-Pacific region has entered into a completely different dimension than where it used to be, and the importance of our alliance has never reached these heights.
China uses coercion and aggression to systematically erode autonomy in Hong Kong, undercut democracy in Taiwan, abuse human rights in Xinjiang and Tibet, and assert maritime claims in the South China Sea that violate international law. We will push back if necessary when China uses coercion or aggression to get its way.
The joint document says China's actions that do not meet with the existing international order are posing political, economic, military, and technical challenges to the Japan-U.S. alliance and the global community. It also expresses concern over a new Chinese law which authorizes Coast Guard vessels to use weapons in waters Beijing considers to be under its jurisdiction. The foreign and defense chiefs discussed America's commitment to the defense of Japan, including the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. Japan controls the islands. China and Taiwan claim them. The Japanese government maintains the islands are an inherent part of Japan's territory in terms of history and international law. It says there is no issue of sovereignty to be resolved over them. The two countries say they'll continue to stand against any unilateral attempt to change the status quo or undermine Japan's administration over the islands. Secretary of State Blinken told reporters that Washington has been reviewing its policy toward North Korea. He said he wants to complete the process in the coming weeks after consultations with Japan and South Korea. Blinken also said Washington has been reaching out to the North Korean government since mid-February, but it hasn't received a direct response. Later in the day, Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide met with Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin.
I will soon visit the United States and hold talks with President Biden. I would like to make it a meaningful meeting to reaffirm the bond of the Japan-U.S. alliance.
Suga is scheduled to make the trip next month and become the first foreign leader to hold an in-person summit with Joe Biden since the president took office in January. Turning to North Korea, the younger sister of leader Kim Jong-un has harshly criticized the ongoing joint military drills by the United States and South Korea. Kim Yo-jong's comments on Tuesday were Pyongyang's first reaction to the drills. They began March 8th and will conclude on Thursday. Kim Yo-jong had strong words for South Korean authorities in a statement published in the ruling party's newspaper. She wrote, quote, "Their idea of seeking confrontation with the compatriots in the North and hostile behavior toward the latter, which festered to be a chronic disease, have reached an incurable state." She described South Korea's explanation of drastically scaling back the drill as ridiculous, saying Pyongyang has opposed the drills but never argued about their scale or form. Kim Yo-jong threatened to end an inter-Korean agreement aimed at easing military tensions. She also gave a warning to Biden's administration, saying, quote, "If it wants to sleep in peace for the coming 4 years, it had better refrain from causing a stink at its first step," end quote. Her comments come a day before the U.S. Secretaries of State and Defense visit South Korea. South Korea's defense ministry emphasized that the drills were command post exercises of a defensive nature which have been conducted annually. Media outlets in Myanmar say at least 4 people died on Monday in the continued crackdown on anti-coup protesters. The United Nations says at least 138 protesters have been killed in the country since the February 1st coup, including some women and children. The military is apparently ready to ramp up the crackdown. It's declared martial law in parts of the country's largest city, Yangon, where administrative and judicial powers are now in the hands of the military. On Monday, protests were staged in the second largest city of Mandalay and other places. Security forces reportedly opened fire on citizens, leaving at least 4 people dead. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres strongly condemned the ongoing violence against peaceful protesters. A group that includes lawmakers from Aung San Suu Kyi's political party issued a statement on Sunday calling for resistance to the military. It said the act of law-abiding self-defense is not criminal. Japanese nuclear regulators have assessed a security lapse at a nuclear plant in central Japan as the most serious level in terms of anti-terror measures. Sensors for detecting intruders in the plant might have been broken for a year. The Nuclear Regulation Authority was notified by Tokyo Electric Power Company in January that a worker at the Kashiwazaki Kariwa nuclear plant accidentally damaged the equipment. The regulator reported the results of its inspection at a closed-door meeting on Tuesday. The probe found several other sensors might have been broken since March of last year. The NRA chairman said its provisional assessment was the most serious on a 4-level scale of risks in safeguarding nuclear material.
Third parties could illegally enter in multiple places for a long time. This indicates the plant was in an extremely serious state.
The NRA revealed that TEPCO employees in charge of security did nothing, despite knowing that alternative measures taken were ineffective. Last September, a separate incident took place at the plant. An employee improperly entered the plant's central control room using another employee's ID card. All reactors at the plant have been offline for regular checks. Now for the latest on the coronavirus in Japan. The state of emergency declaration for Tokyo and 3 neighboring prefectures is slated to expire soon, but questions linger over whether it should be extended. The government plans to hold an advisory committee meeting as early as Thursday to discuss the situation. The declaration for the capital and the prefectures of Kanagawa, Saitama, and Chiba is set to expire on Sunday. It began in January and has already been extended twice. The government says that the hospital bed occupancy rate is slowly improving.
The issue is the strain on the healthcare system, specifically whether the overall hospital bed occupancy rate has eased to the 3rd level on the 4-level alert system.
Meanwhile, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government reported 300 new cases on Tuesday. The number of new cases increased in the capital by about 10% over a 1-week period through Tuesday. The head of the government's expert panel, Omi Shigeru, says the state of emergency will be lifted sooner or later, but he warns that the risk of infection cannot be reduced to 0.
I want the central and local governments to secure more hospital beds and take measures to prevent a rebound in cases.
In light of the economic impact of the pandemic dragging on, the government will provide about $460 in cash per child for households on which the residence tax is not levied. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide said at the meeting of relevant ministers that the government wants to address people's concerns and work to improve problems. NHK has learned that officials are making final arrangements for a 5-party meeting next Monday to decide whether to allow overseas spectators at the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics. The International Olympic Committee, the International Paralympic Committee, the Tokyo Games Organizing Committee, the Japanese government, and the Tokyo Metropolitan Government have agreed to make a decision by the end of this month. Japanese government officials are increasingly concerned about accepting visitors due to the unpredictability of coronavirus variants and the infection situation both domestically and abroad. The organizing committee is preparing to begin the Olympic torch relay next week, about 4 months before the start of the Games.
The relay should not create crowds of spectators. We would like to call for the public's cooperation.
The committee says if too many spectators come together and fail to disperse, the torchbearer will not run that section. The relay may also skip places where a cluster infection has been confirmed. Unusually warm weather is speeding up the blooming of cherry blossoms in parts of Japan, including Tokyo and Kyoto. Our meteorologist Sayaka Mori has the details.
Hello there. Spring is the cherry blossom season for Japan. The flowers began blooming in Kyoto on Tuesday. That was 12 days earlier than normal and the earliest on record. And because temperatures warmed to 22 degrees in Tokyo, more flowers are coming out in Tokyo. Now, talking about spring, it's a yellow sand season for many places of Asia. Yellow sand battered Mongolia, killing at least 11 people, and Beijing experienced the worst sandstorm in 10 years on Monday. So also yellow sand, and also some of it is reaching the Sea of Japan side of the country of Japan at this moment. Now, the cold front is dragging yellow sand from the continent, and it's also bringing rainfall to western Japan. Another system is bringing snowfall to northern Japan, especially Hokkaido. It's going to be another warm day in Tokyo on Wednesday, Seoul at 16 degrees, and thunderstorms are possible in Chongqing with a high of 24 degrees. Heavy rain has been pounding parts of Hawaii since last week. Over the past 7 days, more than 1,100 millimeters of rain has fallen in Kauai, and more rain is possible. Although the peak is over, more rain could lead to flooding as well as landslides. There is a chance for rainfall in many places, including Honolulu, into the weekend at least. Now, we are seeing some snowstorm once again across the Four Corners region, and there's a chance for severe thunderstorms across the southeastern United States into the latter part of this week. It's going to be a chilly day in Denver at 2 degrees and warming up to the double digits in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, Indianapolis at 18 degrees. A baby giraffe enjoyed spring weather for the first time last week. The 4-month-old calf is named Candy, and he made his public debut at the Indianapolis Zoo. These animals are sensitive to cold and wet weather, so the care team waited until the weather improved before letting Candy outside. The baby giraffe and his mother may need to stay indoors this week, as rain and storms are expected for the area. That's it for me. Have a nice day.
Italy's Prime Minister has welcomed the EU medical regulators' reassurances about the safety of the AstraZeneca vaccine. The EMA is still carrying out a full review of the data, but says it's convinced the vaccine is safe, despite suspension of its use in several countries. Islamist militants in Mozambique are believed to be behind gruesome killings. Some of the victims are children as young as 11 years old. More than 2,500 people are thought to have been killed since 2017. The US Secretary of State has warned China against aggressive behaviour in pursuing its regional interests. Speaking in Japan, Antony Blinken said the US would push back if China used coercion to get its way. And the Duke of Edinburgh has left hospital in London after spending 4 weeks under medical care. Prince Philip, who's 99, did not speak as he began his journey back to Windsor Castle.